Hi, my name is Robin, but I'm not only Robin. I have DID. You may be wondering what that is. Well, it just means I have multiple personalities, or as some may call it, dissociative identity disorder. I began to understand my different personalities only when I turned 16. There are many things I'm still afraid to talk about, horrible things that happened to me, which resulted in me developing this disorder. Just before I let you in on my life, I'll explain how this whole thing fits together. But keep in mind that without the help I had from a psychologist to understand what happened to me, I could never tell this story. It all started one hot day during the summer. My mom never really let me go out much, and that day she had finally agreed to let me spend the weekend at my best friend Martha's place. We were so excited that we actually made a schedule for how we were going to spend our time together. I packed my bags, and Mom dropped me off at Martha's. I was so happy that I was going, but kind of nervous, too. It was the first time I'd been to her place. I didn't know if it was because of the anxiety I was feeling, but after unpacking my stuff, crazy things started happening. I suddenly didn't remember where I was or how I got to Martha's. I couldn't understand why the clothes in the cupboard were mostly fitted crop tops and tight pants. I was never comfortable wearing those kind of things. I had a bit of a panic attack when Martha ran into the room all excited, carrying a tray of cookies. I didn't even want cookies. In my head, I had this thought that I wasn't allowed to have cookies because they were bad for my teeth. I knew I was only 8 years old. So what was I doing out of the house in Martha's bedroom with her drooling over how great the chocolate cookies were? I think she noticed I was startled. She didn't ask me any questions. She just dropped the cookies and said she'd be back when I was settled in. I sat on the bed and fiddled with the card games whilst thinking about being back in my own bed. I just wanted my mom. Evening came, and I was curled up on top of the sheets, keeping to myself. I hadn't touched the cookies or taken a shower. "You need to eat and take a shower. What's wrong with you?" Martha asked in a tone I was unsure of. And like lightning, I jumped off the bed. How hungry I was. In no time at all, I'd finished the cookies and was back to chatting with her, as if nothing awkward had just happened. Before we'd started chatting, she asked, "Are you okay being here? Because earlier you put me off with that weird attitude. It's unfair how you treated me. You're acting like two different people." I stared at her, lost for words and more confused than ever. I barely had anything to say, mostly because I couldn't remember having a weird attitude. I only kept to myself for a few hours because I wasn't feeling very well. Our conversation didn't end well, but I let it go. While I didn't fully grasp what was happening at first, I knew something was wrong. I often forgot about stuff and felt out of place, and that was just the beginning of many awkward situations. I eventually got through the weekend. The random and frequent blackouts and amnesia worried me. I started to keep to myself because what was happening to me didn't seem logical. For a long time, I didn't want anyone to know that I was having psychological issues. "They'd think I'm crazy," I kept telling myself. And that's when my problem started escalating. A few months after that, I kept struggling with having blackouts and multiple switches within myself. One day, I fell off the staircase. This incident was overly suspicious because I had just talked with my dad about how enthusiastic I was about a new offer I had just gotten, only to fall with a thud about 2 minutes later. I was rushed to the hospital immediately, and that was when my mother started to pay a lot more attention to me. Of course, I tried hard to keep my disorder away from my family, especially my mom, due to our past differences. But I couldn't stop the conversation from happening. After that incident, my mom confronted me and asked if I wanted to talk about anything. She told me everything she had observed over time, and she tried to convince me to confide in her. I gave in to her request to visit a therapist only because I was fed up with her going on about it. It seemed like the easiest way to put it behind us, but I was wrong. It became a long journey of jumping from one clinic to another. I had seen different doctors who told me a lot about my disorder and advised me to find a balance and draw up a timeline for each personality. They advised me to talk to my alter egos to find some sort of common ground so I could stop the blackouts and become more aware of situations I got myself into. During one of my therapy sessions, the doctor questioned me about experiences I was afraid of. I talked about the situation between me and my mother. This grueling exercise triggered Scar. She came out to protect me from the traumatic experience. Eventually, we started to make progress with me discovering myself. I had 3 personalities in addition to Robin. Ellie is the first persona I figured out. She is 8. She gets sad when she doesn't get what she wants. She loves to watch Rick and Morty. She is afraid of the dark and is only comfortable when she's around other children like her. Ellie, Scar, and Stacy. Stacy always came out when I was planning to hang out with friends or party or just have a good time. She was the life of the party, the one person I could trust with my social life. Stacy loved to sing, and she wowed the crowd every single time. On Thursday, we went to karaoke and picked Ed Sheeran's Kiss Me as the song to open the night. I picked up the mic and said hello to everyone. Hey guys, I'm going to open with my favorite song, Kiss Me. I noticed this cute guy across the room. I'm not sure he paid much attention to me until I hit the first note. To be honest, I found it hard to not let him distract me. He walked up to me afterwards, and we talked over a drink. His name was Tom, and he became my boyfriend. He made me so happy. He was cool and easy to vibe with, which was a bit new for me. I had closed myself up to people because it was too stressful to keep convincing everyone who got close to me that I wasn't crazy. Tom and I had a few more dates, and then on one of our outings, Scar kept fighting with me to take over. Scar was the opposite of Stacy. She always kept to herself and loved to listen to sad songs, mostly melancholic ones. She gave off the impression that she was a loner, someone who loved the darker aspects of life, and who often became so engulfed in herself that she'd forget other people even existed. I discovered Scar after I had a falling out with Martha. It really hurt me when that happened, and Scar helped me get through it. She hadn't come out in a while, and I wasn't ready for Tom to misunderstand me. I gave in after a little struggle. Tom and I were talking about our feelings for each other when I suddenly became really cold towards him. I vaguely remember him asking if everything was okay. It's okay if this conversation makes you feel awkward. We could reschedule. There's really no pressure, he said. To be honest, I had no idea what was happening. Scar had blocked me out. After the date, Tom and I didn't talk much. I was afraid stuff between us had been ruined, and I still needed to get a grip on handling myself if I was to put another person's feelings into consideration. Days and weeks passed without Tom hearing from me. He tried to reach me on social media and at school, but I kept my distance. Until one day when he showed up at my door. I heard the doorbell ring, and there he was, standing there, staring at me, with questions he needed answers to. Hi, Tom. What a surprise. I wasn't expecting you, I feigned. Yeah, can I come in? He said. I offered him a drink, and he declined. I guess he was more interested in finding out my reasons for ghosting him. I sat across from him at the table and listened to him as he said everything that was on his mind. Why are you pushing me away? Why do you ignore my messages? Why are you hurting me? So many whys to answer. I kept my cool and explained to him that I was just having some difficulties finding myself, that I was a bit lost. But then I thought to myself, this guy really cares about me. So I thought it'd be wise to just tell him what living with DID felt like. I knew it was finally time to confess. Tom, I have dissociative identity disorder. I have multiple personalities that switch up at different times. There's Ellie, Scar, and Stacy. Ellie is 8 years old, and right now she wants to come out. It is her time, but I'm overruling, which is going to cause an imbalance in our routine. Tom looked at me and held my hands. He said this was no reason to have blanked him out and that it wasn't going to scare him away. I think I cried a little bit. Eventually, Tom and I became a couple. I've been really strict about following the time frames allocated to Scar, Ellie, and Stacy, and I'm still struggling to keep up with one personality. I get afraid that people will call me a creep or leave me because they might find me exhausting, but I'm just doing my best to manage it and to keep seeing my therapist.
I was the only boy born into a girl's village after 20 years. When you're the first boy to be born into a village chock-block full of girls after 20 years, let me tell you, that's some burden to bear. All you guys out there are probably thinking it must be like winning the lottery, girls flocking to your feet everywhere. Yeah, it kinda was like that at first, but then things just got weird. Okay, so I live in a small village in East Europe, and the women have been giving birth to only girls for the past 20 years. We aren't really sure why, but my village believes that they got cursed from a witch that they kicked out a long time ago. But if you ask me, I think God is the one punishing us for kicking her out. On top of all that, people in my village are not allowed to marry people from the outside. So, the moment my parents realized I was a boy, they quickly wrapped me up in a blanket and kept my gender a secret. They told everyone I was a girl and that my name was Jackie, when in actual fact, I was a boy and my name was Jared. A little bit weird, right? But my parents had no other option. They knew that people would freak out if they found out I was a boy. No one in our village had given birth to a boy in more than 20 years, and my parents didn't want me to get so much attention. They just wanted me to live a normal life. Except it wasn't normal, and I only realized that now, thinking back. At the time, I was none the wiser. I happily played with dolls and wore frilly dresses and let everyone call me Jackie. I mean, I didn't even know I was called Jared. Well, that was until I was 5 years old. I was playing in our backyard when a woman appeared on the other side of the wall. She was dangling some candy in front of my face, and like a little puppy dog, I followed her. I kept looking back, expecting my parents to come running out to get me, but they were nowhere to be seen. The woman asked me to get into her car and told me that if I was a good boy, she'd give me more candy. I didn't even think twice. My parents never let me eat candy. But then, I realized she'd said good boy, and I turned to her and told her I was a girl. I'll never forget the way she threw her head back and let out a chuckle. She looked at me and said, "Sure, Pumpkin, and I'm the President of the United States." Oh, look, there's a flying pig. I fell for it and looked, and the next moment, she'd lifted up my dress and said, "See, you're a boy, you little freak." I didn't understand what she was talking about, and then she explained that I was a boy and that my parents had been lying to me. Then she said the village mayor was offering a reward to the first woman to give birth to a son, and seeing as my parents were keeping me a secret, she'd hand me over and collect the reward money herself. I was too young to fully understand, but I knew I was in serious trouble. I started screaming and thrashing my arms about, and this only made her drive faster. I have no idea why I did what I did next, but suddenly I jumped onto her knee. She couldn't see where she was going, and that's when we crashed. We could have died, but I didn't care. At that moment, all I wanted was to get away from that horrible woman. And it was my lucky day, because all that happened was her car got a bit crushed, but I escaped without even a scratch. I started running back towards our village, and she was chasing me, but I was too fast for her. My parents suddenly drove by, and my mom burst into tears. Well, there was nothing that woman could do. She was well and truly caught now. Turns out she'd escaped from a nearby psychiatric clinic, and they came and picked her up promptly. My parents had no other choice. They had to tell the mayor and everyone else that I was actually a boy and that my name was Jared. But I like being Jackie, I told them. That just made my mom cry more, and when she switched my dresses for shorts and t-shirts, I felt strange. I thought no one would want to be my friend anymore, but I couldn't have been more wrong. All of a sudden, every girl wanted to be my friend. I was the center of attention, and honestly, it was too much. I was just a kid. Suddenly, I had girls hanging off me, wanting to play with me all the time. How come I was more popular as a boy than a girl? Anyway, the older I got, the more intense it became. When I turned 12, the village mayor started a new tradition. From now on, every year on my birthday, I'd sit on a throne for the whole day, and all the women who wanted to conceive baby boys would come and bow at my feet, and one by one, they'd reach out and kiss my feet. It freaked me out so much. But the mayor told me he'd buy me a special gift if I did this one thing for the village. One time, though, it was taken too far. One woman wouldn't stop kissing my toes, and suddenly, I felt a sharp pain shooting through my body. She'd gotten so carried away, she'd actually bitten down. I was even bleeding. After that, I refused to do it the following year. It was just some stupid ritual that the village thought would bring them luck. And come on, it wasn't even working. I was still the only boy. When I turned 18, I decided the only way to handle all the attention was to just embrace it. There was one girl, Sammy, who was actually pretty cute. And after she basically begged and stalked me for weeks, I agreed to be her boyfriend. Of course, all the other girls were jealous, and I was worried I was about to start World War III. Looks like Sammy won. I actually felt like I was really falling for her, and one night she invited me over to her house. Her parents were out, so we started making out. She was really hot. She reassured me they'd only be home much later, but suddenly we heard the door. I leapt behind the sofa half-dressed, and then things went horribly wrong. Well, how did it go? Did he put a baby in you yet? Come on, Sammy, we aren't paying you all this money so you can sit around. Give us a grandson already. I couldn't believe it. She'd been using me. I stood up and gave her parents the biggest fight. Then I turned to Sammy and said, "Screw you. I hope it's a girl you have." Then I grabbed my clothes and walked out. I never wanted to see her again. But then later she fell off the stairs and had a miscarriage. To everyone's shock, Sammy was actually pregnant with a baby boy. After that, the whole village knew about it and made them go even crazier. Women lined up outside my house for the whole day. Some even tried to enter my home. Everyone wanted my number and my social media contact. They even put security to watch me. But then I was like, screw it. After the way Sammy used me, I decided to get revenge by dating as many girls as possible. Girls were basically falling at my feet, while guys around the world were doing the impossible to get girls' attention. So I dated a whole bunch of them at the same time, and they did everything for me. They got me food, gave me massages, and I got all kinds of gifts daily. I mean, we all know how much fun a guy like me can have with girls. They were just so hot and amazing. And the best part, I didn't have to work for it. But there was so much expectation. They all wanted sons. I wasn't ready to be a father. Babies were so not my thing. I tried to talk to my mom about it, but suddenly she started crying. I told her I wasn't interested in hearing about how much she wanted a grandson again. But then she took me by surprise. She told me she was sick and that she didn't have much time left and that she only wanted me to be happy. I felt so guilty. Was I being selfish? Why couldn't I just give my mom what she truly wanted, which was clearly a grandson? After our conversation, I asked Amy, who lived next door to us, if she wanted to be my girlfriend. I made her swear to keep it secret so that the other girls didn't get jealous. I felt like time was against us. Mom kept getting more sick, and Amy and I were having no luck getting pregnant. Then I thought, what if I had another girlfriend too? I don't know if it was the thought of losing my mom and not giving her what she wanted, or if I was actually going insane or something. But I asked Leanne, who lived at the end of the village, if she'd like to be my girlfriend too, and obviously she said yes. Please don't judge me for two-timing. I just felt desperate. And then shit hit the fan. Clearly the universe wasn't playing with me. On the same day, they both called me and told me they were pregnant. Amy was a strict Catholic and said her parents would kill her if we didn't get married. So I married her at home and we had a quiet little ceremony. But then Leanne told her dad she was pregnant and he threatened to beat my ass if I didn't marry his daughter. I knew I didn't have a choice, but was it even legal? 2 wives? But no one would need to know. This all happened in the same week. Suddenly I had 2 wives and 2 babies on the way. Leanne's dad gave me a job on his farm, so I spent the daytime with Leanne. Then every night I'd go home and stay with Amy. Can you believe I didn't get caught? My parents knew about Amy, but I just prayed they didn't find out about Leanne. Listen, I wasn't happy about it. In fact, I didn't feel anything for these girls, and I was sure it would get out at some point. And it did, because both of them gave birth to boys. I was there for Amy's and had to rush over to Leanne's to make her birth too. And the mayor held another stupid ceremony. Well, there was no way I could go. Everyone would find out. I packed a small bag and gave my mom a kiss goodbye, and then I took my dad's